The fact that we are living in a timeline where Johnny, the person I and so many others grew up trying to base our look on and failed poorly. But the fact that this person right here is now getting called a poser blows my mind. But this is the reality of social media and conversation. And boy, do we have a big conversation ahead of us today. But before we get into that, hello there, my name is Cowder's Life, and on this channel we do video essays talking about things on the internet and then all discussing it as a team in the comments section, sharing our thoughts and opinions. So if that sounds like fun for you, please feel free to subscribe. We are trying to beat this here little ratio. Zooey mama. And if you're not new here, hello again old friends, it's me, your boy Cow. And I am warm, it is warm. I am overheating, so let's crack on. Johnnie Guilbert, whether you love it or hate it, is a name that deeply resonates with the modern day emo community. A musician, a YouTuber, and a TikTok personality, Johnnie has been a prominent figure in the alternative scene for literally like over a decade now, I'm pretty sure. Emerging from the shadows of like the mid to late 2000s emo wave, he quickly became recognized as this popular member of the YouTube group My Digital Escape. What a group that was, dear lord. But despite his long-standing presence and like influence within the scene, Johnnie has recently come under fire online, with accusations of people labeling him as a poser and like questioning his validity within the scene. In this video essay, we're going to be exploring Johnnie's origins, the evolution of the emo subculture, and like the controversies that have put him in the spotlight. Ultimately just to examine his impact of his time on the internet as a full-time social media creator, I guess. And I suppose with that, we're gonna like consider the ethical complexities of it all and their like lasting implications. I feel to truly set this video essay off, we need to briefly talk about the histories of the emo culture. Emo culture, what a wild ride it has been for the emo movement. The emo movement originally started off as something called emotional hardcore. It was music that was linked to the punk scene, almost like a post-punk movement, you know, but it had a strong ethos on the DIY natures of punk itself. It was a powerful expression and they were doing it themselves, and it was very anti-mainstream. Fast forward like 20 years and we've got what emo became, whether you like it or not. And this is the part of the emo culture that I was in. You know, like this pop rocky sound. Think Blink-182, My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy, Linkin Park, Weezer. That like rocky pop sound that all kind of just got lumped in as emo because it had connotations of sadness in their songs, I guess. The latter wave of emo is far more characterized by its aesthetic. You know, back then in the late 2000s, it was like the skinny jeans, the swishy hair, the checkered red shirts, the big belt buckles, basically exactly how Johnnie looks. This is why he's like the poster boy of the modern wave of emo. And yes, I have to acknowledge it is very different from its hardcore musical roots. Completely different. But this is now in the modern day world what emo is considered. Long gone, whether you like it or not. And I know a lot of the music purists will hate it, but long gone are the emotive hardcore roots. And I know in the comment sections of this, people will be like, how? My Chemical Romance isn't emo. Yes, according to the OG definition, not emo at all. But if you talk to people my age and Johnny's age, we're both like 26, 27, I think. This is what we grew up listening to as kids that were emo. You know, we wore like the Black Parade tops. And I know, I'm pretty sure My Chemical Romance actually came out and were like, we're not emo, because I think they're trying to fight the negative stereotypes of the things that were going hand in hand with emo at the time, like self-harm and depression and stuff. You don't want to be like, yeah, you have to have these things to be in the community. But those bands were heavily linked to the emo movement. And I know me saying this stuff is going to really anger the musical purists, but this is the reality of the modern day world and how mainstream media has taken control of the emo movement and turned it into this. You know, this is the emo movement that I grew up in. I wasn't old enough to see the emotive hardcore, the emotional hardcore scene. It got taken over and it became like this pop rocky, skinny jeans, swishy hair with hairspray. Like, look, and that's all I've known. So this is the very modern take on emo, and this is probably the take that I've experienced and a lot of the people that are Johnny's fans have experienced, because this is all they've known as emo. So that's not me discrediting the original emotional hardcore roots or the emotive hardcore roots, but acknowledging the reality of today's world of what emo has become shaped to be. And you can put that down to social media and mainstream success of bands like Fall Out Boy, Linkin Park, and My Chemical Romance, but they played a huge factor in shaping what emo was to become. And that's where Johnnie Guilbert comes in. Literally from being a teenager, a young teenager, Johnny has been, probably unknowingly, a poster child or poster person for what emo should look like. Whether you love it or hate it, this is what people were trying to emulate. I was trying to emulate this. All my friends were trying to emulate this. We didn't even know Johnny's name at this point. We had just seen him on the internet and we're like, yeah, we want to look like that. I think he got reblogged on like a website and we're like, yeah, we want to look like him when we grow up, even though we were the same age. And it definitely was a phase because I don't look like that anymore. But Johnny does, which I think is cool and a testimony to his authenticity to the modern emo movement. That's what we're going to call it today, so the musical purists don't get upset. Like I said, I'm not trying to discredit your views and feelings and opinions. This is just the reality of the world when we are talking about modern emo now. Sadly, long gone are the DIY roots, and this is just the reality. So, Johnny's rise to fame. Johnny has literally been on YouTube for like a decade. He was part of the YouTube group My Digital Escape with the notorious Brian Stars. The less we say about him, the better. But Johnny has been pretty open about his experience and this period of his life. He got into it when he was 14. Him and his mother thought it was a good opportunity for him to give him a purpose in life because he was upset and he was struggling. So they thought him working in YouTube would be, a chance for him to, experience happiness and basically have a better quality of life. From there, he kind of just continued to do his thing even after the My Digital Escape group ended, just making his own content. And about a few years ago again, he got huge again for making content with his friends out in LA, doing the most. Look at this dynamic duo. Oh goodness, they are having silly fun times, ha ha ha. This isn't me being sarcastic, by the way. I just don't really use tone of voice much. But yeah, having a good time, all is well. He's very relevant again in the alternative scene. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're the person I wanted to look like when I was a kid emo. And now I'm not an emo. But look, you're back. That's so cool. That's so funny. Isn't that interesting? And that kind of brings me on to my first big talking point in this video, and it's probably my biggest talking point. The accusations of being a poser. Why is Johnny being considered a poser? Let's talk about that. I think when discussing Johnny being a poser, there's like multiple reasons for this happening. As mentioned earlier, because of the emotive hardcore purists that see Johnny, they will never recognize him as emo. They'll take him as this modern day movement of the movement, the modern day movement of a movement, but they'll take him as the modern day version of it, which is like this poppy, sellouty, commercialized, not DIY, but like looking a certain way over sounding a certain way type person. So in their eyes, they will never consider Johnny emo. And to people like you and maybe the viewers at home that are part of the modern day emo movement, we'll be like, that's crazy talk, yo. That guy looks exactly like an emo, acts like an emo. Bro is emo. I think as sub-movements go, emo has to be the one that was like commercialized the most in the early 2000s. I know you can make very good arguments that the goth movement and the punk movement have been commercialized a lot, which they have. Online these days, it seems a lot less about the DIY ethos and more about just looking a certain way and acting a certain way. But I think the emo movement was completely taken from the emotional hardcore movement and that scene and being, very linked to the punk movement and a post-punk movement to now being like this rocky sound where it all gets lumped together as emo if you don skinny jeans, have the swishy hair, and your music is vaguely sad and contains teenage angst. You were considered emo. So I think because of the rise of social media and stuff, people are now coming online and being like, he's not emo. Let me tell you about emo. And then they'll crank out some bands from the 90s or the 80s that get like 30,000 streams on Spotify. And that's not me coming at those bands or belittling those brands, because most of those bands will be completely independent, completely self-funded, a very DIY ethos, which is awesome because, all their monthly listeners will be members of those communities supporting that original ideology, which is beautiful in itself. And the sense of community spirit there must be flawless, incredible, and empowering. But at the same time, you've got the modern day emo movement, of which Johnny undeniably is. Whether you like it, he is the modern day picture and example of emo. And if you have a problem with Johnny and you're calling him a poser, I would say your anger's not really towards him, as he is just a product of his environment and the environment I was brought up in when, I got into emo. Your problem is more with like the capitalization or the consumerization of emo. It got turned from being this DIY ethos into this thing that represents rebelling against your parents. So actually I think is a lot of what a young people can relate to, you know, having those feelings of like, I just don't fit in, and boom, that's where emo came in. Boom, we all started wearing our sister's jeans. Boom, we all wore eyeliner. Boom, we all had straightened hair. And boom, yes, if I can find a picture of me like that, I will definitely not show it. No, I'm not giving you lot the ammo of emo cow on the internet. That needs to be scorned from the planet forever. I just didn't pull it off that well. I just looked incredibly awkward, probably because I am a perpetually awkward human being. Another reason why I think Johnny now gets called a poser a lot by people on the internet, especially on Twitter, I see this happening a lot, is because like I think people to be different will Google emo, read about its roots and how it's linked to the DIY ethos and punk in the OG days, even though it's very disconnected from that now, and will be like, actually, Johnny's not emo. I'm real emo. I'm so different. I'm so quirky. Do you know, feel like they're like one-upping people and they're in the know and everybody else is not. I think that's a real tendency people do online. People love to one-up each other, and it creates this weird culture of fractured groups like the emo movement where people are like, that's not emo, this is emo. And that person is probably not been in the emo movement very long themselves. They've just read the Wikipedia page and been like, oh yeah, I now know about its origins, emotional hardcore, which I think is a moot point because that's just not the reality of the emo movement now. Like I said, Johnny very much embodies the modern day emo in looks, in how he conducts himself, and in his sound as well. I think also another interesting reason why more people are calling him a poser nowadays, and it's maybe the trap I would have fallen into if I was, you know, younger, maybe like 21, 22. It's almost like this phenomenon that happens with people that have role models when they grow up. So say like when you're younger and say you were an emo and then you grow up and you get a full-time job and you kind of drift away from being emo because of like societal pressures and you have to wear like say smart casual to work or something. So you slowly become less and less emo. Those role models you have that are still emo, you're just like, that's kind of cringe and that's kind of performative because I'm now an adult as well and they're an adult, but why are they still dressed up as emo? Don't they have like a job or something? And it's just like, I had to age up and you didn't. I think those feelings of you having to do something but someone else not can be turned into like feelings of just being like angry or feeling some type of way towards someone and just being like, poser, you're just cringe, you're performative, you're just doing this for likes, clicks and views. When the reality is Johnny is in a super privileged position where he doesn't have to age up, you know, where he doesn't have to be his inauthentic self, where he can just keep doing his thing and for as long as he wants, because yes, he may be your favorite wholesome content creator, but that man is a multi-millionaire. Sorry to burst your bubble, all big content creators make a lot of money, therefore they don't have the same societal pressures as a regular human, so they don't have to age up, so they can just conduct themselves as they want to. There's no pressure on them in that sense, because they're not going to like a 9 to 5. They're not being worn out every day in some job they don't really like, but they have to do because of like family pressures. They just rock up and they express themselves in their authentic way. But I think because you're seeing a, you know, person that's now in their late 20s still dressing up as early 2000s emo, you're just like, poser, cringe, not a real emo, because a lot of elder emos don't even look emo anymore. So maybe it's those feelings of uncomfortability in yourself that you're displacing onto just some random person that got super lucky on the internet that doesn't have the same pressures and norms as a regular person, you know. And I can totally relate to that. I think a younger me would have been like, yeah, he's a poser, he's just doing it for the clicks or whatever. It was like last year or 2 years ago, I had to like try and on purposely age up because I noticed I wasn't being taken seriously in my career. I would walk into work and have Pokemon stickers on my headphones, and I had a big Mike Wazowski on my keychain, and I noticed, even though it was probably banter with colleagues or they were just having light fun with me, I noticed lots of people making jokes about the way I dressed and the way I conducted myself. So I was like, well, if I want to be taken seriously, I've got to stop all of this. And I did, which kind of sucks, but I did get taken more seriously at work. I think this is the sad reality a lot of alternative people do have to face, is aging up and conforming to the mainstream to fit in and to be taken seriously, whereas a lot of these full-time creators don't have to. So it creates a disconnect to the fans that have been big fans and then aged up and grown up and are no longer outwardly presenting as emo, and the actual creators themselves. Does that make sense? I hope it makes sense, because it makes sense in my mind. Another interesting talking point I see come up time and time again with Johnny on TikTok is like his controversies and accountability. For example, there's a video getting shared around of Johnny doing an accent challenge, but the video was about 9 years old, I think. Johnny, of course, addressed this in an apology video, being like, You know, this is completely inappropriate, and it has racist ideologies, and it has negative stereotypes. No, he took the situation, took full accountability, and tried to apologize for his wrongdoings. And this isn't me defending his actions. I think what he did was, you know, distasteful and wrong. But in these conversations of bringing up people's controversies from 9 years ago, perhaps, we need to think about the nuance and the seriousness of this situation. And by that I mean, 9 years ago, the social landscape for what was considered normal and funny was completely different. Like, let me show you an example of this show that was very popular in the UK not that long ago, called Little Britain, and they had another spin-off series called Come Fly With Me. Characters would regularly do these horrific stereotypical accents, regularly do blackface, and it was horrific. And now looking back at that, it is grotesque, and it's disgusting, it's so immoral. But at the time, this sort of humor was so normalized, okay? And no one thought with critical thought that they would do nowadays and be like, this is disgusting, this should never see the light of day. Why are these white people doing this? This is horrible, right? You know, in the modern day world in 2024, we'd all be like, that's not okay, that would never fly, we'd never condone that. But this type of humor was normalized back then. So I could totally see how a 14, 15-year-old boy could see this was on mainstream media, this sort of stuff, and it's normalized to him. So he almost imitates what he sees on the TV, because TV is right? You mimic what you see on TV. And though it seems disgusting to us today, and, you know, especially if you're a younger viewer watching this who's never been exposed to that type of content, so you'll be like, oh my God, that's disgusting. Rightly so, you've never been exposed to that. That's never been normalized to you. Back then, and when we're thinking of this with nuance, we've got to remember that was normalized. So you can totally see how people fall into that trap and do end up making those mistakes themselves. And I should stress, that's not me saying, I say it's okay, so he's forgiven. No, I'm not the ones affected by his actions there. So it's not for me to say, you're forgiven, buddy, it's done now. But what I am saying is he is taking accountability, he's taking the situation, saying, sorry, what I did was totally wrong and disgusting. He replied to comments, you know, to show that he really is there. He's taking on board what people are saying. And that is genuinely, which is sad, but this is genuinely quite rare for a content creator to take full accountability like this and hold their hands up and be like, yeah, what I did was genuinely disgusting, I'd never do that again. And another example of Johnny taking this very forward, progressive stance on, you know, completely condemning his younger self's actions was in the case of this. There was an incident in a video where Johnny used a slur because he was telling another person in the video not to call him that. Now in doing so, he said the word himself, which isn't really good, is it? Well, it's not good at all, it's bad. But what did Johnny do? Johnny on multiple occasions apologized and said it was a lapse in judgment, and basically was saying, you know, don't say that word, but in doing so, he said that word. But there's nuance, and you've got to think of context here. It's not saying he's promoting the use of that word, and he will regularly say it again. He actually said he'll never say that word again. What's happening is he had this lapse of judgment, and he was like, oh no, you shouldn't say that word. But he spoke before he thought and said the word himself, which is a shame, because it's going to hurt people, especially people that are affected by that word, you know, because they might be members of his community that have had that word used against them, and they're gonna be like, oh, that's such a shame. Someone I, you know, really felt good about saying something that is hurtful to me. And again, this is not me saying, Johnny, I accept your apology, so it's all okay. No, I'd never do that. I'd never put my voice over the people affected by his actions. Of course not. That would be immoral, heinous, and weird, and like just super like self-inflated importance to conduct oneself like that. That's never the case. It's just showing that Johnny is, unlike many creators who will just sweep it under the rug, which we're seeing a lot in present day at the moment. Lots of creators being called out for stuff and they're just not addressing it. Johnny actually is there in the comment sections, and I've noticed this on lots of videos, not just ones where he's being called out, but videos you make about him. He will be there in the comment section engaging with you all, which I think is very rare to see. He clearly cares about his community. He clearly cares about doing the right thing, and you can see that by how open he is about talking about his controversies. Instead of trying to be this content creator that's like, I'm a smooth-crotched Kendall that does nothing wrong. I'm Mr. Perfect. This is my perfect life. He's like, yeah, I will talk about these things with my community. I will address it. Let's talk about it. So we don't make the same mistakes ever again. He's using his wrongs as a way to educate, which I think is like the most amazing way to go about content creation. And that's not me saying, he can do no wrong. He can be no wrong. Of course, he's made errors in his life, but he uses them as a tool to educate his community, which is great because I think there's this weird parasocial relationship that happens far too many times in content creators' lives where they do position themselves as these perfect characters and they overthink everything they say. But they're a human. They're gonna make mistakes. The thing is with mistakes is you just openly admit it, and just because you say you're sorry, it doesn't fix it. But it's just acknowledging you did wrong, and you move forwards as a community instead of just poking your head in the sand and waiting for it to go away with some blasé blanket statement apology. I'd much rather see a content creator be like, yeah, I messed up. That's super not cool of me. Let's talk about it. Get members from the actual community in the comment section talking about it. Express yourself, educate yourself. And then not only does the content creator become better educated on the situation, perhaps others in his community that weren't as aware of those things can learn. And that just creates a better world universally. Another interesting talking point I found myself looking into when looking at Johnny's time online is like the over-sexualization and almost like parasitic fan culture he has. And I do want to say, most of his audience seem like the loveliest bunch that truly care about the content creator. It looks so validating, and it's so nice that you really champion the content creator you like. That's awesome, and it's great to see. However, I noticed there's a small demographic that are so incredibly vocal that create a weird vibe for everybody else from, you know, outside, just being like, that's weird, what's going on there? And it's this small portion of fans that over-sexualize Johnny and make it really, really weird. And I'm pretty sure Johnny has spoken himself about this making him uncomfortable. And I think this is one of the real tough things content creators have to face. And it's not like a woe is me or woe is them moment where it's like, oh, it's so tough. I know it's a very privileged job role to have. And a lot of the time, Johnny's content isn't sexual. He's just being his regular self. But fans will take it upon themselves to say these really heinous, crude things or make these really weird fan edits that are just a bit crude. And it's something I can relate to in a way, because I used to wear tank tops all the time in my videos, because with all these lights on and my apartment being very warm, it's like a sweat box. But I found that there'd always be like a few comments every video just over-sexualizing me, and I'm not a sexual creature online at all. My videos are me talking about things on the internet, but people would say whack things about how I look and my body, and it made me feel weird because the videos are about the things we're discussing, not necessarily how I look. And that's not me to say you can't say a nice compliment about a person. I've had lovely compliments being like, Cal, your smile is nice. That's fine. But when you say weird things about my body and all of that stuff, it leaves a sour taste in my mouth, because it's like, oh, I just put like 15 hours in to try and make a good video essay, and that's all you're taking away from it, which sucks. And seeing that on Johnny's scale, he's this content creator that's like 100 times the size of me. Having that burden of being sexualized when you don't want to be sexualized must be horrible, and it must change how you perceive yourself. You see yourself as this like commercialized object that you have to package and sell to people, rather than you're just a person on the internet that shares his views and has a community that people want to be a part of. And that must really, really suck. And I think it's almost like because of this explosion in popularity again through TikTok, he's just got this new wave of real parasocial fans. And I'm not saying it's all of them. In fact, most of his audience is this lovely, caring audience that really genuinely care about him, and that's really wholesome. But this small proportion that are so vocal, that have created this real parasocial domain environment. And I think that can really affect the content creator and the community, because if you put your content creator on such a pedestal, it could give them such an ego, because they're like, I can do no wrong, I've got this loyal army that will blindly follow me. And also in the community, it's going to create so much friction and anger and war, because people are going to be butting heads and being like, I champion him the most, and then others will be like, just enjoy his content and be normal. And then like, you can't say that, that's my Johnny Boo 6000. And it's like, dear Lord, you don't know him. You don't know him. Stop making creepy fan edits. You don't know him. I don't care if you donate to his Twitch. You don't know him. Sorry, I don't know if I'm being too real there. But some people genuinely need to learn that you don't know these content creators. And though you may feel you resonate and relate to them on so many different ways, and they totally just get you in a way that your legal guardians just don't, you don't know him. Cease. You're making it uncomfortable for everyone. And I made the pillow move, and I probably really disturbed Skog. I'm sorry, Skog. Let's get you sorted, buddy. But somebody needed to say it. Stop sexualizing people you don't know. Bussing down sexy time should just be for you and your partner, consensually. Not bussing down sexy time on the internet for people you don't know. It makes us all uncomfortable. Now I'm in cardigans all the time, and it's sweaty, oh so sweaty. I even saw a video of someone just trying to critique Johnny, not even in a rude way, but just being like, did you know Johnny's sound sounded very similar to this other song? And people in the comment section were being like, don't talk about Johnny, you don't know Johnny like that. Johnny replied politely in the conversation because he realized it was just a conversation. But all you jumping on people before you even let Johnny speak on the situation, it's weird. Stop speaking over the actual content creator. You love Johnny, right? He's your best. He's the one you stan. I don't know why I'm turning into some sort of like weird, creepy goblin here. But the fact that you turn it into this thing where there's no conversation, he's just like on this golden podium, creates a weird environment for everybody else. And it makes it a hostile one where people don't want to join because it's just like, why are you making this man some sort of like weird overlord amongst all of you? Super weird, super creepy times. Don't like it. Like, I watched a few of their vlogs he does. Funny as hell. Then I read the comment section and I'm like, nope, not coming back here again. That's makes me uncomfortable. Finally, I'd just like to talk about the pros and cons of Johnny's existence on the internet as a whole. I think when I look at Johnny and like 99% of the other content creators he'll get lumped in with, Jake, Tara, people have said, why is he collabing with TX2 and Caroline, which you can have your own opinion on, but all these content creators are clearly meant for like teenagers and young adults. They're entertainment, they're entertainers. It's the equivalent of seeing a TV show and being like, I like those characters. That's how you should view them. And that's not to say that they shouldn't be held accountable when they do wrongdoings. Of course they should. There is that weird blur line that even though they are entertainers and they're probably being characters in one way or another, they still need to be held accountable, unlike, you know, a TV character would. So this is a weird dynamic, I know, but bear with me. But I think the mass majority of Johnny's audience is, you know, teenagers, very young adults, that type of age group. So, you know, elder emos or elder alternative people, or just regular folk in general, may find him corny, or just be like, he's a poser because he just looks like the stereotype. I generally don't think he is a poser at all. I think he is the real deal of modern emo, and he just never has grown out of it. For Johnny, it wasn't a phase, and I think there's real beauty in that, and it's real genuineness. I think with Johnny, he has the capabilities, and he does do this to, you know, promote self-expression. In his case, it's promoting the modern day emo movement. I think he's very open about his mental health, which, you know, can be inferred as a good thing because it creates conversation about how we're truly feeling instead of bottling things up. These are good things, I think. And I think as role models go for like teens and young adults, we need more content creators like Johnny who, you know, when they mess up, will hold themselves accountable. They'll be in the comment sections having discussions with the people they've upset or hurt. Instead of thinking they're like these perfect creatures that can do no wrong, take a note out of Johnny's book and just be amongst it and actually talk amongst your community, address things, even address things that are 10 years old. That shows like a real commitment to wanting to better himself and also be a good example for his community. He seems very inclusive in that sense and very mature and to like consider things. And also I should say, that's not me saying if you're an adult you should feel weird about watching Johnny. He seems like a very disarming human. He could be your comfortability streamer or content creator. I can understand why you would want to watch Johnny if you just wanted to chill and have a nice, easy time. He's a very unintimidating human is how I'd describe him. I'm just saying the typical person that's gonna be a big fan of him is gonna be a young person that's probably learning about self-expression, dipping their toes into the alternative movement. And Johnny is as far as content creators go, a very harmless role model to, you know, get amongst. Now, what do I think the negative cons of Johnny are? If I'm being like really analytical and critical, and this is obviously a very online take that has pretty much zero practicality in the real world, but things that are, you know, open for discussion are, does Johnny's perpetuation of a very specific look in the alternative movement dilute the other aspects of the emo movement and make it this very aesthetical thing? Perhaps, maybe, but also I don't think the emo movement really is anywhere near as linked to the DIY ethos as much as goth and punk is still, even though they've been diluted a lot. And, you know, you'll see elder goths and punks say this. I think emo really has been removed from its emotional hardcore days. And yes, there is a revival going on now in the independent scenes, which is very exciting and interesting to see. I must admit myself, I am not too interested in that side of things. I much prefer listening to the most listened to album of my whole entire life, The Black Parade, and being like, wow, No, it's not a phase, Mum. It is a phase. I'm part of the corporate machine, guys. I failed you all. Yeah, I still see your shadow. I don't know where I'm going with this. I think also you could say the audience he's cultivated, this very toxic audience, is problematic. But then again, I don't know if that's his fault or just a thing that's happened. And to that, yeah, as soon as I said that out loud, I'm like, yeah, that's such a weak point. But I'm just thinking, is there something he did to cultivate that? I don't think there is actually on saying that out loud. I think that's just... it happened because of TikTok, and the TikTokification of content creators is very interesting. They get these very die-hard fans that make all these crazy edits about them, and some of them are very nice and wholesome, but others are just weird, and the emotions are there and for the right reasons. It's being put out to the world in a weird type of way that makes everyone go, that's some stalkery type business. You know, I think now I would like to conclude on this video essay. I think Johnnie Guilbert's journey through the emo subculture is a testament to the complexities of maintaining authenticity in the digital age. While he has undoubtedly faced criticism and controversy, his impact on the community cannot be understated. The chokehold this man had on me and my peers to, you know, look like him, dress like him, was unmatched. And I think the gatekeeping and like accusations reflect a real deeper issue within subcultures. And by that I mean like the definition of authentic or like authenticity just becomes this absolute battleground of unproductive conversation, gatekeeping, purists, people just trying to dip their toes into movements. They're all smashing heads. And it's almost like the beauty with these subculture movements is there's no 100% concrete definition. It's just about self-expression and taking from the community, but also giving to the community, giving back, getting yourself involved. I think Johnny's experience like highlights the unique challenges faced by like social media content creators, I suppose, who must like navigate the fine lines between like personal growth and being their genuine authentic self, and also like fan expectations. And by that I mean like his attempts to take accountability for past mistakes, no matter how long ago they were. I think that shows a real willingness to grow and learn. And I think it shows the real beauty and reality of being a human is you will make mistakes, and it's just about how you learn from them. I think as we like very onlinely, that's what I'm calling this, onlinely look at Johnny's time on the internet so far, it's just like really interesting to consider the broader implications of like fan culture and like the just responsibility that comes with having an influence online. And it's almost like what I kind of hope to see in my comment section from this video. But by fostering like this more inclusive and understanding community of like open dialect, we can ensure that subcultures like emo continue to thrive and evolve. And by that I mean like the hardcore emotive scene or the emotional hardcore scene, you know, expressing their opinions. And it's not this like battle of you newbies are posers. So they're talking about like me and, you know, being like, you're just a poser. You may feel that type of way, but we can have a conversation, right? It's almost like the whole thing has so much nuance to it. You can be right and so can I, in our own ways. And I think that's the beauty of all of this, just conversation, real genuine conversation. Let's celebrate the roots of emo and also its just modern day iterations. Yippee! Imagine me with flags. Yippee! Nah, for real though, Johnny's emo. I don't care what you say. Let's get conversating in the comment section. I can't wait to hear what everyone said. Oh golly gosh, I hope I don't get a bandwagon of musical purists hating on me. That's never my intention. I also never want to upset anyone. I just want to have conversation and be realistic with these things. Conversation is so interesting. Say conversation more, cow. Conversation! There'll be another video essay here if you want to watch another one of my videos. I'll be down in the comment section talking to you all, and I'll also be in the next video. Yippee! Okay, bye!